How's it going, everyone, and welcome back to the Kinomentor channel. I want to talk about now the Maya user interface. Now, why is it important to talk about the user interface now? It's because when you open Maya for the first time, it's going to be very confusing. There are a lot of panels, there are a lot of things to kind of look at, but also it can be stripped down of immediately seeing all the tools that are out there. So at the same time, it's very daunting, but it's also very simplistic in terms of its presentation. So it might be a bit confusing, but let's dive straight in and I'm going to show you the most important components of the user interface. When we're in Maya here, what you're greeted with is something that's going to look like this. So the most important thing to understand is that the biggest part of the screen here is taken by the obvious viewport, okay? So in the viewport, you can move around in 3D, and by holding Alt on your keyboard, you can move around, and by left clicking on your mouse and holding Alt, you're able to move in the viewport. So that's the number one crucial thing to understand, is how to move within Maya. So with holding Alt and left mouse click, you can orbit around. By holding Alt and middle mouse button, then you can pan like this. And if you hold Alt and the right mouse button, you can zoom in or zoom out. Okay, so those are the key shortcuts and movement guide that you need to be aware of when you are starting in Maya. After that, let's have a quick look at all of the panels so that you have an idea and a quick overview of where are things located. The first thing that I want to look at is the menu sets. So in the top left corner here, what you're going to see is a menu set, right? And that menu set here is, you can actually change it, right? So you can change from modeling, rigging, to animation, to FX, to rendering, to customize, okay? So now, and by default, you're going to be in the modeling. But if you switch to rigging, watch what happens. This top part here is actually changing, all right, to give you tools that are required for you, or that you might use when you're rigging, for example. Same thing goes for animation. This back part here changes completely and gives you tools that are available to you if you are planning to animate. Same thing for effects. You get fluids and hair and constraint and cache and so on. Same thing for rendering. Okay, so this is number one thing to understand here, is the menu set. The second one are the menus, okay, that contain both the tools and actions for working your scene. The main menu is that at the top of the Maya window. Okay, so it's here. Those are the menus that you can use. Then what we have is the status line, okay? So what is the status line? Well, the status line contains icons that are commonly used for general commands, like, for example, file, save, and things like that, right? And this is located here, okay? And you can click on these vertical dividers to open them or close them the way that you want to use them. All right, so those are located here. That's the status line. Obviously, you can open your file, you can close it, you can undo, and so on. So that's the location here. And you have also a very important thing, is the shelf. So here is the shelf, and the shelf actually contains most of the tools that you can also find by going into the menu, but actually what happens is that it's quite faster to jump to a shelf and, let's say, quickly click onto, a sphere, and you have a sphere that gets created, right? It's way faster in some occasions to work in that sense that way, right? So keep in mind that the shelves are also customizable, so you can create your own shelves with putting your own tools that you plan to use. So shelves are very useful. So after that, we have the workspace selector, right? And that's on the far right side here. And you can start changing, again, if you change to sculpting, for example, it's going to reorganize Maya in a way that gives you the tools for that. If you're planning to rig, it's going to switch and show you things in the viewport that are related to rigging. So motion graphics, for example, if you plan to use Maya for motion graphics, it's going to rearrange it. Bear in mind that might be useful, but 90% of the time I generally stay within the boundaries of using Maya Classic, and I organize my workspace in a way that's going to work for me and not something that's right off the shelf, something that the programmers thought was good. After that, you have the sidebar icons, okay? So these are the sidebars here on the side, and actually what these do is they give you also options that are going to be useful at a certain stage. Now, what is the next in line here is the channel box, okay? So in the channel box, what happens is that when, for example, you're creating, let's say, a polygon sphere, for some reason, I'm going to create a new scene to show you this. Okay, so here is the polygon sphere, all right? And what you can immediately see is that the channel box here gets populated, all right? And what this gives you is a lot of information regarding this sphere, what the position is in X and Y. You can change the scale in one axis or any other axis. So the idea of this is that it gives you information, the channel box, on things that are present in your scene. Underneath, we have the layer panel. So for example, if I've created two spheres, I'm just going to duplicate them real quick here to show you this. I can create a layer here, okay, by clicking on the plus icon, and I'm just going to select left click on this sphere here and say add selected object. And if I click the V here, it's not visible anymore. So I get just this sphere visible. If I create another layer, which I'm going to left click on this sphere and then right click and say add selected object, I can just decide to show either or. So it's a very powerful thing when your scene starts to get complicated with a lot of elements and groups and whatnot, and you want to group things together or show something and hide something else. It's a very useful tool here. Finally, we have the at the bottom here, the timeline. So the timeline gives you what it says, the time. So you can scrub through time in the timeline. You can make sure to make it the full length, or you can use this here to make it shorter if you're working on an animation and you want to make sure that you're just playing with this frame range, not with the entire frame range. All right, and then what else that's important here? Yes, the toolbox here on the left side. On the left side here, we have the toolbox where you can actually have the pointer, or you can use the lasso tool to select point select tool, to select things in the scene. So, for example, if I had a bunch of vertices that are selected here, I could select some of them like this, and so on. Below here, you will have the move, scale, and rotate options, which later on I'll be talking about, and you will be able to see when I'm switching by using the keyboard shortcuts. I generally use W, E, or R to use and change from scale to rotation or to moving. And right below here, underneath, you have what is called the quick layout outliner buttons. So if I start clicking on this, I can rearrange my workspace to have 2 or 4 views and so on. And the one below is the outliner, and I think this is pretty self-explanatory. The outliner is actually outlining every single thing that you have in your scene. So all the nodes and everything that's used gets shown into the outliner. Then as a last thing, here on the right side at the bottom, right next to the, so we had the time slider and we have the range slider. On the right side here, you have your playback options if you want to go forward, backward, skip frame by frame, and so on. Underneath, you have the command line. So here is the command line where you can type, lines of code to be able to, animate something with code or ask some, Python code and ask something to be done in the scene through this. And finally, here we have the script editor. So if you click on the script editor, it's going to load it up and show you the script editor where you can also type lines of code. And finally, here we have the frame rate that we can change if we have some character sets, if we want to decide to have auto keying or not. Those are the options that are here on the bottom right. And pretty much that wraps up what the entire Maya workspace is all about. And you will see as we start talking about how to work and navigate in Maya, things are going to make way more sense in terms of how they're used and how this magnificent layout is made, because I think it's one of the best out there in any 3D software I've encountered until now. So thanks for watching. I hope you like this video. Don't forget to subscribe on our channel and like this video if it brought you some cool new info regarding the workflow in Maya. And I'll see you in the next video.